I was in the depths of sorrow, mourning the loss of my father-in-law, when Tom, my husband, shattered my fragile world with a cold declaration. Now that I have the inheritance, I don't need you, my ADM, anymore. Let's get a divorce. I stood there, frozen. His words didn't make sense. I tried to process them, but nothing seemed to fit. Did he just call me an ADM and say he didn't need me anymore? What do you mean? I finally managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. Tom responded with a self-satisfied grin. I inherited $11 million from my dad, so I don't need you. The meaning of his words slowly sunk in, each one a knife piercing through my grief. He had just inherited a fortune, and that was all he cared about. It didn't matter to him that we'd built a life together, that I was grieving the same loss he was. No, he only saw an opportunity to rid himself of me. He wasn't done yet, though. He went on to complain about me as if I were an inconvenience he had been forced to bear. He mentioned our arranged marriage and how he had been disappointed when I, a modest woman, showed up. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He had known all along that he didn't want this marriage, yet he had gone along with it. He had agreed, and I had trusted him, assuming he wanted to build a life with me. I felt the cold weight of reality settling over me. Then why did you marry me? You could have said no, I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. He looked at me with that same arrogant smile. For the money. Who else would marry someone like you? The room seemed to spin as his words hit me. He had never loved me. I had been a means to an end, a stepping stone to his inheritance. I had spent 2 years of my life believing I was building something real, only to find out that it had been built on lies. Understood, I replied, holding back the storm of emotions rising within me. I walked over to the drawer and pulled out the divorce papers I had quietly prepared months ago. The look of surprise on his face was almost satisfying. He hadn't expected me to be so ready, so calm. But I knew then that I had to leave him behind. I handed him the papers, saying, "I'll sign them." He blinked, taken aback by my decisiveness, but I could see he was still smiling. To him, this was just another business transaction, a parting of ways with no strings attached. What he didn't know was that I had my own plans. He would come to regret this choice, of that I was certain. But I kept that to myself, letting him enjoy his moment of victory, not knowing that it was hollow. I had thought Tom was someone I could trust, someone I could grow with. Instead, he had been a stranger all along, someone who saw people as tools. But I was done playing that role. I reflected on our past, trying to find the man I had once seen in Tom. When we first met, he had seemed so carefree, so full of life. It was an arranged marriage, yes, but I had seen glimpses of kindness in him, or so I had thought. My father-in-law, Mr. Morgan, had seemed reluctant when he introduced us. "Are you sure about this, Amy?" he had asked, with a worried look in his eyes. At the time, I had brushed it off, believing that I knew better. I believed I could bring out the best in Tom, but looking back now, I could see that the signs had always been there. He had no ambition, no drive. Shortly after we married, he quit his job without even discussing it with me, assuming I would take care of everything. When I asked him why he would do such a thing, he shrugged, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "Why should I work when you're earning enough for both of us?" he had said, and I had let it go, hoping it was a phase. I had never realized how deep his indifference ran. I had always been the one to make sacrifices, to compromise, while he took whatever he wanted, never giving back. Things changed when my father-in-law adopted David, a 9-year-old boy, not long after our marriage. Tom had been furious. He saw David as a threat to his inheritance, nothing more. He never considered that David had lost everything, his family, his home, and was now being thrust into a world he didn't understand. My father-in-law had told me privately about the adoption. David was the son of a close friend who had passed away, and Mr. Morgan wanted to give him a chance at a better life. But Tom, of course, was only concerned about the money. "I don't want my inheritance divided up," he had said, his voice laced with bitterness. When he had confronted his father about it, he had come back triumphant, convinced that David would give up his share. "Dad said he'll have David renounce his rights. I'll still get everything," he had boasted. I had tried to reason with him, but it was like talking to a wall. He only cared about what he believed was his, never considering that David was a child who needed support and compassion. Then, in a cruel twist of fate, Mr. Morgan passed away in a sudden accident. The loss hit me harder than I had expected. I had known him for years, admired his strength, and respected him as both a businessman and a father figure. I found myself alone in my grief, as Tom remained disturbingly indifferent. At the funeral, I had watched Tom, hoping to see some flicker of sadness or loss in his expression. But instead, he seemed distracted, almost impatient, as if he were waiting for something. After the service, he couldn't contain his excitement any longer. He pulled me aside and said, "How much do you think he left?" "I'm the only one who inherits, right? David renounced his rights, so it's all mine." I was horrified. He wasn't mourning his father's death. He was celebrating his newfound wealth. I couldn't believe the man standing in front of me was the same person I had once trusted. Realizing that Tom would never change, I knew it was time to move on. I took David under my care, deciding that he needed a stable home, something Tom could never provide. I sold the house we had shared, moving closer to my parents. I wanted David to have a supportive environment where he could grow and feel safe. It was a fresh start for both of us. I knew there would be challenges, but I also knew that I could handle them. I had found a new purpose in life, raising David and honoring the memory of the man who had trusted me with his son's future. As I began to rebuild my life, I heard little from Tom. I assumed he was busy enjoying his inheritance, unaware that I was moving forward without him. I felt a sense of peace, knowing that I was free from his greed and manipulation. Then, out of the blue, Tom reached out to me. He sounded desperate, insisting that he needed to talk. I was curious, so I agreed to meet him, if only to see what had become of him. When I arrived, I was surprised to see how much he had changed. He looked pale and disheveled, a shadow of the man he had once been. He explained that his father's debts had been larger than the inheritance, and he was now struggling to pay them off. He begged me for help, claiming he had nowhere else to turn. I looked at him, remembering all the times he had belittled me, called me an ADM, and treated me as if I were disposable. I felt nothing but a cold satisfaction as I told him I couldn't help him. He had made his choices, and now he had to live with them. I had my own life to lead, and I had no intention of letting him drag me down with him. As I walked away from him for the last time, I felt a sense of closure. Tom was part of my past, a reminder of the mistakes I had made, but he no longer had any power over me. I had a new purpose, a new life with David, and I was determined to make the most of it. Now, I am focused on building a future for both of us, one free from the shadows of greed and betrayal. I am stronger than I ever realized, and I know that I can face whatever challenges lie ahead.